Welcome to the High Tech Freedom Podcast. This is a podcast where we bring successful tech sales professionals, thought leaders, and entrepreneurs to share best practices, insights, and lessons learned with other tech sales professionals. As a sales professional, the more we learn, the more we earn. Once we earn it, how can we put those hard-earned commission dollars back to work to build additional income streams that will create the freedom we are all working to achieve? I'm your host, Chris Freeman. I'm a high-tech sales leader, real estate investor, and lifetime learner. All right, welcome to the High Tech Freedom Podcast, episode number 52. And I got to tell you, I'm really excited to have Donovan Pearman join me today because he is a field sales rep who has just absolutely crushed it over the years. And he has such an interesting progression in his career. And what I know about it, let him explain this better than I will, but he started off as an SC covering the sub-Sahara African market. And then when I first met him, he was actually in LA working at a business partner and running a specific vendor practice. I believe it was a Citrix practice at the time. So he was more of a technical resource, leveraging his prior experience as an SE down in South Africa. And then he made the move into a sales role where he just started rolling off consecutive years of overachieving his goal. What really impressed me and has always impressed me about Donovan was how quickly going into that sales role, he established access and credibility at the executive level within his accounts. Because as you all know, I mean, the higher we can get, the faster business can get done and better we can do as sales reps, really identifying the pain and the issues that's ultimately driving the need for whatever technology it is that we're representing. So I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. Hey, Donovan, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Chris. That was a really great opening. I love that. Absolutely correct. You got my history down to a T. I feel like sometimes you said better than what I do, but that was great. Thank you.
Well, I did my research, had to go back to the memory banks a little bit.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
So did I miss anything in your roles or history, or is that captured it well?
No, I think you got it straight on. That was perfect. Thank you. Yeah.
Now, I understand, though, I left out one big thing. You're not a sales rep anymore.
That's true. Look, so you say that, right? I feel like I've actually always been a sales rep. And I feel like everybody actually is a sales rep, whether you're in just a casual conversation with someone talking about your favorite sports team, trying to convince them about something. So I feel like I've always actually been a salesperson. So even though I'm not classified by title as a salesperson, I'm still a salesperson. I don't think I'll ever not be a salesperson.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I often talk to people that are not in a sales role, and I'm always plugging my podcast. I was like, look, I know you're not a salesperson, but you should come check it out because even if you're a product manager, you have an idea that you need to get sold either internally or externally.
100%. Yeah.
Well, so Donovan, you made the move to management recently. How did that play out?
Very interesting, actually, because I never thought that I would do the leap, actually, because I loved being an individual contributor. There's just something so exciting and exhilarating about, controlling a deal, an opportunity to bring it in and then closing it, right? And hit that you get from winning. And so, moving into a management role was a little bit scary for me, to be very honest with you, because I felt like, now I'm going to just let go of all of that. And now I don't have control of it all of a sudden. And so I had to mentally kind of deal with that. But otherwise, moving into the sales position has been actually really exciting. I feel like, now I can take what I've learned and the do's and don'ts and the gotchas, the things you should say, the things you really should steer away from saying, and kind of, apply some of that experience to my team. And hopefully they can gain, some knowledge and turn that into their own success. Yeah,
it is. When you have the opportunity to move from a top performing field rep into the leadership role within the same company, it is a fun time because you have so much experience at that company that you can lean on, and bring back to your team, based on everything that you've done.
Certainly.
So I'm curious, out of all the different roles in SE, running a practice at a business partner, sales, now sales manager, what's been the hardest or most difficult role for you?
That is a really tough question, Chris, because I don't think any of them have been easy, and I couldn't say one was easier or harder than the other, purely because I felt like almost all of them were always hard for me, right? I was putting myself out there. I was taking a leap at every time I was changing, going from an SE, I was leaping into sales, right? Going from sales into sales management, like these all leaps. And, so I would certainly say is I keep challenging myself, right? And putting myself out there on the edge, because I feel like that's where I perform the best, right? So I would say they were all equally as difficult because there was a lot of change that was happening during all of those times, right? There was a lot of evolution that was going on as an individual, right? So I would say I would put them all on an even scale there.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you just said something there about putting yourself on the edge, because it's growth happens from being challenged, right? Getting to the next level often will come from pushing yourself into uncomfortable new situations that you have to rise to the occasion to go address. And you can sit at home and be comfortable, and nice and warm and cozy, but nothing grows there.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Nothing ever came to me sitting on my couch, that's for sure. So, Chris, you mentioned that. And one thing I wanted to mention is as you're speaking there, like I thought of the word fear, right? Fear can be the greatest inhibitor, but also at the same time, the greatest enabler, right? Sometimes I do these things and they scare the heck out of me, right? But I got to believe that I got to do it, right? And I have the desire and the need. And then, and I just go for it, right? And I make it work. I feel like that's been kind of my philosophy is, just keep looking forward, just, learn from your past mistakes and just keep pushing, just never stop, right? So I don't let fear, and a lot of what I've seen historically is people let fear control them and inhibit them and limit their ability, right? So if you can actually clear that away, I feel like it's just, like a rocket ship, because you could be on the back of fear rather than have it on your back, right?
Yeah.
So just a kind of a little mental game there, but I just dropped that little tidbit in.
No, it's such a great point, because, fear, you're kind of living on the precipice of going either way. And, to your point, I think a lot of people will have that fear and then they'll start making up all the things that could go wrong. And then they don't take action. And, as you can imagine what happens. But I love what, the way you put that is, you have fear, but you're using that fear to drive to, okay, how do I go tackle it? How do I go challenge it? In fact, I was just reading this book called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And he talks a lot about that. When you have a challenge or you have a big obstacle that's in front of you, how can you turn that around from being fearful? How can you turn that around from being pessimistic about how things aren't going to work out and look at that as an opportunity? Because, it's all about perspective and how you just adjust your thinking.
Completely. I mean, that's sales in a nutshell, right?
Yeah, it's so true.
You can wake up in the morning and be afraid that you're not going to hit your number. You're not going to be able to get that deal in. And let me tell you, you're going to have a bad day, right? So probably a bad month and a bad year. So it's about the attitude. I think that's synonymous, really. I think that's across anything, right? Any, professional sportsman, any professional that's in the industry, not just related to sales. I think that's even like a life thing, right? You've got to wake up with the right attitude, and you got to want to win, and you got to believe you're going to win, right? So yes, absolutely. You got to start the day right. And let me tell you, I have a little thing that I do, right? When I wake up in the morning, I got to get my coffee, right? I got to go sit on the porch and I got to just stare out there. I don't know. That's just my thing, right? And then it just comes to me. And then, yes, I'm ready for it, and I start my day. So it's really a mental game for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's your version of meditating.
Yeah, I guess. That's right. Yeah.
Well, so I'm curious. So Donovan, I've met a lot of people that have tried to make that jump from SC to sales.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a decent number of them that really struggle because it is such a different role. I'm curious, what was that experience like for you? What were some of the lessons you learned along the way that you might want to pass along?
So, Chris, I would go back to my first comment, right? I feel like I've always been selling, and it wasn't really very easy for me to just transition. But I just woke up the one day kind of, I want to just do that, right? And I just had this feeling, right? So I didn't want to sit back and support a sales cycle anymore. I wanted to own it, right? And it took me I would say it took me almost a full quarter to kind of come to terms with like, what am I saying to myself? Like, I love this. I've been doing SC stuff for like ever, right? And now all of a sudden I want to go sell. There was an urgency, right? In myself. Like I felt like I was challenging myself, and, that control, I loved it. I wanted it. And I got to see that, hey, look at what they're doing. Maybe I could do that, but not only just do it, but I could do it better. Right. And then I just made the shift. And then from there on, it's been phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, you saw what you wanted and you took action. And I think for, anything that, from a sales perspective, you can look at your territory, look at your accounts, look at your current position and be frustrated, or there's something you want to do different and you can bitch and moan because it's not available. It's not easy. It's not hard. You can sit and do nothing, or you can just take action and just start working at it, knock it down. And you clearly have the taking action part figured out.
You have to, Chris, I got to tell you, nothing comes from doing nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a straightforward thing. If you put in the energy, and I really believe it, I got to say from my personal experience, right? When I started sales, I looked at it and I said, how do I want to start? Right? Because everyone's got to start, right? But I think it's the how you start that's really critical. Actually, it's absolutely critical is how you start. Because, if you start looking at everything right in front of you and you can't look forward and beyond that, you'll tend to struggle, right? And I don't know if you've ever played chess before, but I want to say sales is kind of like a game of chess, right? The purpose of all the pieces on the table is to get the king in checkmate, right? That's the purpose. That's the purpose of the entire game. But if you focus just on moving your little pawns, you're going to forget about the big moves that happen at the back, right? And so I took that approach. I said, well, look, if I'm going to start this, I got to really put my mind behind planning and thinking about it, and really thinking about how do I want to go after it. And then from that day on, I kind of kept that same principle, right? Quarter over quarter, month over month, year over year.
Yeah. Well, and so I think that probably has a lot to do. We've talked offline about how there's been multiple years where after the first quarter, if you were not already at or over your annual plan, you're pretty darn close to it. And I think everything you just explained has a lot to do. It wasn't that you did something magical in that quarter. It's you were working all year, the prior year, to set yourself up for a monster Q1. And then after that, it was all fun and gravy. So
absolutely. So it all starts with the plan. If you speak with your management team and you say, look, here's my plan. This is what I want to go for, right? I didn't start just out the gate hitting, right? I started with a strategy, and then that strategy got implemented, and then I started hitting, right? And then once I got ahead, then I just changed the game. Then I just decided, well, how do I be successful next year, right? So it's kind of like going back to the chess table, right? I need to start looking at those pieces at the back, because those are the big move pieces. Those are the pieces that will get the game won, right? And so, I started selling. Once I was ahead, I just sold deals for the next year. And then I just carried on repeating the same thing. And, everyone wants to get out the gate soon. And, oh, well, Donovan, you're a unicorn, whatever, not everyone's going to have that same success and whatever, those are the naysayers, right? And those are the guys that are like, yeah, whatever, just another sales pitch, right? Or just another person thinking that everyone could do that. Absolutely believe that everyone can do it. It's just about how you approach your business. And I truly believe if you have a good plan, a solid plan, and you work your plan, it will serve you and you will win for sure. Chris, you were right. Every year I was over planned by not just a little, by a lot. The one of my years I was like over 210%. And the numbers, we're not talking about small numbers here. We're talking about big numbers that I was 210% over. And my average, I was hitting around 150, 170%. So getting to number for me was just never what I wanted. I always want to go and I want to blow out and get the real money, right? Because that's where it sits. The money sits in the accelerators. Like if you go to any company and you want to start and you want to work for OTE, then you're going to miss, right? It's kind of like saying, well, I'm going to shoot for the outfield, but you're going to get in the infield, right? You need to shoot for the bleachers. You need to point, you need to be like, that's my shot. That's what I'm calling, right? That's how I've been doing my business.
I love it. Clearly you've got the thinking big part down, and you may not necessarily initially know exactly how you're going to get there, but it starts with thinking big, then developing your plan, and then just focusing on the steps along the way to go execute it. So you definitely seem like you have a methodical approach about how you approach your business.
Thank you. You got it.
I hope you are enjoying this episode. I wanted to break in with a quick commercial. During the podcast, we sometimes talk about how to invest those hard-earned commission dollars so that you can build that freedom we are all working towards achieving. Now, I built that through 20 years of real estate investing. Now, recently, my team helped me put together a webinar on how top sales pros can create passive income and achieve financial freedom with hands-off real estate investing. Now, I'm still doing this. And as I continue to invest, I'm giving opportunity for others to learn and invest alongside of me. So if you want to learn more, go check out our webinar at hightechfreedom.com/webinar. That is hightechfreedom.com/webinar. We will also put the link in the show notes. Now back to the show. So Donovan, I'm curious. So you've been really successful with your executive engagement, touched on that during the opening, and you did it quickly when you jumped into the sales role. What are some of the strategies that you've learned or that you've used to really build that initially to get that access and then maintain that credibility with all your executive relationships?
So I appreciate you giving me the kudos for it. But in fact, I learned this from someone else. And so, the first thing I'd like to say is always be open to learning. I think it starts there, right? You never be that guy that's like, oh, my company's got somebody in there again trying to tell me how to do things or whatever, right? When you shut down like that, you're going to fail, right? You're going to be who you are in status quo. And then that's probably not the guys that need to listen to this podcast either, right? People that are really super interested are the people that are looking to learn, right? And so I took that philosophy to everything, right? So at Citrix, they brought in a guy called Tony Parinello, and he taught us selling to Vito. And to be honest, it's almost as if it wasn't rocket science either. It's kind of like you have this epiphany. You're like, oh, why didn't I think? I mean, gosh, I should have known that I need to sell at the top. I mean, and I'm talking to the guys at the bottom and thinking this $1 million deal is actually going to happen. I was kidding myself. And so I had to have that mental change, right? And when I did, I realized that I got to act quickly. I got to act fast, and I have to do it now, right? And I just, again, going back to that very action word action, I took action, not in a way that you might think that Donovan picked up the phone. Hey, Mr. Executive, gosh, you should know my name. No, it wasn't the case. I have a mirror in this room, and I pitched myself, right? And so, I learned that pitch, and I took some of those teachings that, you got to get up there to the executive. You got to sound like the executive, right? You cannot talk feature function, right? That's just, you're going to get shunted is the word. You're going to get moved to the guys sound like, right? And coming from an SE world, I was super comfortable in that space. Like, let's go, baby. I can have that conversation. And what I had to do is elevate my conversation. I had to elevate my thinking, and I had to elevate the way that I've delivered a message. And so, Donovan and I got along very friendly, very well in the mirror there as I was pitching, and I'd wear the hat and I'd look at myself and I'd criticize myself, right? Because at the same time, none of my pitches were perfect in the beginning, but you find a pitch and you perfect the pitch, and then you deliver the pitch, right? And that's all I did. That's all I did.
What were some of the specific points that you remember that Tony had shared with you during his training sessions or presentations?
Selling to Vito is the only way because one of the things I remember the most is Vito can make money appear, because a lot of sales reps are like, oh, it's the money, it's the number. I got to sell to the bottom, right? And selling to the bottom is no good for anybody, right? Because there's no value. You can't really help that customer afterwards if you sold to the bottom, right? And so what I've learned is that Vitos absolutely can make money appear, even if they're outside of their fiscal year. If you are solving a business problem, like truly solving, like there is an actual business issue, not, well, we have to move to cloud, that's our initiative. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm saying they're hemorrhaging cash, or they're spending money in the wrong areas, and you can solve that. That's a real tangible thing. They will make money appear. And those deals won't just be the deals that you used to, the onesie twosie things, or the 10s, 20s, 100,000. They're going to be the multi-million-dollar deals, right? And those are the deals that everybody likes working with. The executives like working with multi-million-dollar deals too. And so that was one of the biggest teachings for me. That was kind of like the big change as well, which was, hey, if money can appear, then I'm not limited to when I can sell, right? And when these deals can close. I'm not worried about a fiscal year. I'm not worried about a fiscal quarter or anything. If the value's there, they will do the business, right? And so that was a big teaching. Yeah, absolutely.
What about getting that first meeting? What are some of the things that you do, or maybe you started doing different to get that first meeting, to get that time with that executive?
is no silver bullet for that, Chris. That's going to be my first answer, right? And then what my next position is going to be, you've got to come across the right way. Executives read emails. They absolutely read emails. Everyone thinks your email is dead. Absolutely isn't. The email is alive. They read it. It's just you don't sound like the person that they're interested in responding to. Okay. And so getting that first meeting was more about me just trying to sound like them. Right. And so when I got my first meeting, I mean, it was scary. Like, it's the first time I'm here now, right? All of a sudden now I'm on the top floor of the building. Never walked into this room before, right? So like, I'm used to walking in the lobby and I can socialize with anyone. Let's go to the cafeteria, so showing up on the top floor requires a lot of preparation, right? And that Vito picked up the phone call, right? Because I clearly outlined the time and date when I was going to call him, and all that preparation, right? All that mirror time, I was able to deliver a message concisely enough for them to say, sure, let's give you some time. And then from there on out, it was history, right?
Well, I highly recommend the book. It's called Selling to Vito. I actually read it early in my career when I was working at Lucent Technologies. And back then we would, instead of emailing, we would FedEx the letter to the executive. So they would actually have something sitting on their desk that's like, well, who wouldn't open up a FedEx envelope? And by the way, I would do that right now. I mean, if you want to maybe do something different. And but it was a letter, not an email, because email was just it was being used, but it was just something different. And Donovan had the opportunity to work one-on-one with the author of the book through a contract that the company had with Tony at the time. So such a great opportunity. But I highly recommend the book. Check it out. And then, Donovan touched on something that I want to just go back to, right? You talked about solving big problems for the executive, right? How do they make money, save money, gain a competitive advantage, address some type of risk exposure. And so you're episode 52. If you go back a few episodes, I had Candy Conway on. It was one of my C-suite episodes, and she had been the chief of staff for the CEO at AT&T. And so she was privy to all kinds of board level C-suite discussions. And, she talks about, the vendors that grabbed their attention were the vendors that were 100% focused on solving those business problems. And then they were totally open to the technology solutions and the different options that the vendor would bring. But the initial outreach, all the conversation, all the research was around those problems that they were having with a pretty decent depth of understanding on how it impacted their business. So go check out that episode. I think it's the episode either 48 or 49. Look for Candy Conway. Well, Donovan, as we get close to wrapping it up, as you make all those big commission checks, I'm curious, what do you do with it? Spend it all, invest it, a little bit of both?
Tell you what I do with the money. Well, actually, I do a lot of saving. Firstly, I've got goals, right? Absolutely do investing. So tinker around in the stock market, put money there, and hopefully, that's gonna, pop. But for the larger bulk of money, I invested in real estate, actually. So I have a property where it's a vacation rental, right? So the money goes there. But there's also a part where, I give some of the money away, right? Where I donate it to good causes. Coming from South Africa myself, right? I was fortunate enough to meet a family from Malawi, and the guy was my gardener at the time. And, he told me about his situation and, his kids, as infants, he had to leave them there and he had to come to South Africa to work, and gave him a job, and he sent most of his money home, right? And so I used that some of my money to help him and his family and hopefully kind of reunite them, because I'm a father of two. He's a father of two. And I hate to hear that, he only sees his kids maybe once or twice a year. So, I like to help them too. So.
Oh, wow. That's so awesome. And, at the end of the day, we're on the world. It's good to have a purpose and a goal and work hard. But, if we're not giving back, if we're not leaving our mark on other people within the world, what's the point? So that's great.
Completely agree. When good people like that come in your life and they're just really struggling, I got to help them, right? They're good-hearted, man. And, listen, again, it was just, I saw his heart, and, you don't just want to give money to anyone, right? It's hard to sometimes, or most cases, it's hard to see where your dollars go, right? You just donate it. And I feel like I've done that before, and it's too disconnected for me, Chris. I got a real direct line. I know where it's going. I know what he's doing with it, and it's helping his kids, So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Direct impact.
Yeah, totally. Not saying charities aren't, I just that's me. So
yeah, no, it makes sense. Are you doing an Airbnb with your rental?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. That's cool. Where do you mind if I ask whereabouts?
Sure. Big Bear. We got a place up there. I do skiing. I'm a sportsman, right? So I like skiing and snowboarding and spearfishing and all these crazy things, right? So
I'm putting Big Bear in my list. So now I know another person with a place there. So
you should.
Well, Donovan, if by the way, I really enjoyed the conversation. Oh, I am curious, are you any plans to go back to South Africa? Are you staying in LA?
Actually, I do have plans. Friend of mine, a long-time friend of mine, is finally getting married. Wouldn't believe it. He's getting married, but he is. And he invited me over to be his best man, and plan to head out there in October and a little bit of a bachelor party, go to a wedding, fly back.
Oh, sounds like a great time. Well, Donovan, it's been really great catching up with you. I'm really excited for your success and your recent promotion. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach out?
Sure. I mean, I would say, always reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can search up Donovan Pearman. I'm there. And if you want to connect and send me a quick message, tell me, how you heard about me on the High Tech Freedom podcast. And, I'll certainly make some time to connect with you. Absolutely.
Yeah, sounds good. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap it up?
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't limit yourself. I've seen it too many times where people or salespeople just think that what they're doing is much as they can do, and don't inhibit yourself, right? So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. It's scary. Yes, it is. I know. I've been there, and I'm always there actually, but definitely just put yourself out there. Don't be afraid. Take little steps. If you're afraid to take too big a step, but take little steps, do those things, put yourself out there, and I promise you, it will absolutely yield results.
Great advice. Thank you, Donovan.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks again for joining us today. To get more sales and real estate tips, you can subscribe to our newsletter at hightechfreedom.com. You can also join our private Facebook and LinkedIn group that is exclusively for sales professionals. If you found a nugget of good information in the podcast, please subscribe, give us a positive rating, and write a review. If there is a topic that you would like us to cover in the future, please send us a note through our website at hightechfreedom.com. Until next week, make this your best week ever.